بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يعني اعتذر على التاخير، لكن نبدا النهارده ثاني يوم في المؤتمر سيشنز في ستيت اوف ارت ليكشر، واكسايتمنت to share this session with Professor Dr. Nabi Azzat, and it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Ramiz Saad, who is Professor of Inorganic Instrumentation of biggest environmental lab in Canada. He will talk about diabetes and body mineral imbalance. We know hemochromatosis is born error mechanism and is associated with diabetes, is associated with cardiovascular carcinoma, and also we know other minerals which are important, especially selenium, which is mainly antioxidants, and we see many vitamins containing antioxidant formula containing selenium, and besides some vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin A. Dr. Ramiz will give an idea about this imbalance of mineral in relation to diabetes.
Good morning. I'd like to thank you very much for attending this lecture. I really appreciate it. I'd like to start by thanking the chairpersons. Also, I'd like to thank special thanks to Dr. Mohammed for inviting us to come here and to give you the lecture about the mineral imbalance of diabetes mellitus. Also, I'd like to give many thanks for lots of people who helped me for this project. Dr. Pierre Pommier, who is the president of Canadian Chemist Association in Canada. Also, I'd like to thank Dr. Nabi Azzat, the general manager of Imbalance. Also, I'd like to thank my brother who is attending today. He's a doctor, which he supplied me with so many samples for hair analysis. Also, special thanks to Mr. Medhat Iskander, he's the head of Kamina company, who helped a lot. Also, Dr. Abdallah from Iraq, Al-Basra, which I did so many samples from Iraq to see the level of toxins in Iraq. Also, Mr. Chanda from Bangladesh, who gave me so many samples from Bangladesh. As you know that the diabetic rate in Bangladesh is so high. Their help is really much appreciated. Thanks very much. As you all know that mineral play a big role into metalloprotein and metalloenzyme and hormones. That's why we are going to talk about mineral imbalance and diabetes mellitus. What we did, we are a Canadian company. We are analyzing hair sample, taking hair sample from human being and analyze it for mineral composition. When I left Egypt in 1981, I worked in Germany for a while, and then I worked in Los Angeles for a while, and then I worked in Quebec for a while, and then back to Venezuela, and then now in Canada. Then really my major was what is the role of mineral in soil and in the human being, which any disturbance can cause any disease. Then I started taking almost 1,500 samples and analyzed it for 60 elements. I did 900 healthy individuals, 300 sick with with diabetes, 300 dead individuals with multiple causes. The samples are taken from 32 countries, including Egypt and Iraq and Basra. I analyzed it using a machine, which is really, I'm a supervisor in the lab, I have 5 of them. This machine called inductive coupled plasma mass spectrometer dynamic range reaction. This machine is very, very sensitive to any mineral. It can detect part per trillion, which is PPT level. Then Before, we used to have a high furnace and ICP, but this machine is the latest technology. Who invented the Nobel Prize winner? It can detect, powerful beryllium. Then I can see selenium in very, very low detection limit, which before you cannot see it. What we are trying to do here, we're trying to put the puzzle together. Really, what's really happening in the body in mineral imbalance. I was reading Dr. Linus Pauling. He took Nobel Prize winner twice. He said that you can trace every disease, every alignment with a mineral deficiency. A more complete statement would also include a mineral surplus in the body can also be toxic. Then he will be looking at minerals from both sides, from being toxic and from being a deficiency in the mineral. As you all know, that mineral play a big role. We all know that zinc needed for the production and release of action of insulin. It was a big buzz about chromium again and the need for glucose tolerance factor. Manganese, which is really important for oxidation and combustion of glucose within the mitochondria, which is the major ATP, adenine triphosphate, which is the major for energy. That's why when people are diabetic, their energy level goes down, and because maybe the lack of manganese. Calcium is very much needed for the insulin release and the effect of calcium in the cell permeability and the cell membrane. Magnesium is very, very important. We are all lacking magnesium because we are not eating right. Magnesium is activate almost 300 enzymes in the body. Magnesium is found in all vegetables. That's why people are always saying, eat your vegetables. Because the chlorophyll, it has magnesium, and magnesium, this is very, very important for the body. The difference between chlorophyll and the blood has the heme, which is iron, the chlorophyll has the magnesium. That's why when you're eating too much vegetables, it's very good for your health. Iron is very, very important because iron, this is the blood, as you all know, like globulin and the heme makes the hemoglobin, which is very important for the oxidative stress and the link to insulin resistance. Copper is, I call it, is one of the most important elements in the body, and without the copper, now all the research talking about the chevrons in the body and the cell, and the latest research showing that copper plays a big role into the protein misfolding, because the lack of copper causes a protein misfolding, and when the protein misfolds, it involves on so many diseases, include diabetes. Cadmium is a very, very toxic element, which interferes with zinc. That's why I emphasize again that what's important of toxic element is to look at it and see if the level of cadmium is high. We hear, like in Cairo, Egypt, like lots of people smoking shisha and cigarette, and the cadmium is a really toxic element. The level of cadmium, when increase in the body, it decrease all the good elements like zinc, because they both antagonize to each other. Lead, like I cannot talk much about lead because all the research showing that lead is very, very toxic element. From Saudi Arabia, lots of research about lead, from Egypt as well. Lead displays calcium in the body. Then we all know that before we used to have the gasoline, and we used to use leaded gasoline, and also we used to buy ta'amiyya in newspaper. They wrap in newspaper with lead on the paper, which can come inside the body and display calcium. Lead is very, very toxic, and with analyzing so many samples from Egypt here, I can guarantee you that lead is, is in the body of lots of people. That's why lead is, we have to know how really to deal with lead, because it can disturb the endocrine system as well. As you see here, there is, we put slide here, that's the healthy level. Here's the deficiency, and here's the toxic. As you see that the toxic element, lead, mercury, silver, it can affect calcium. And you see here that the aluminum, cadmium, lead can decrease the zinc, which is much needed for the body. You see that lead and mercury affect the selenium. Mercury here is very, very important because all the fish, most of the big fish has mercury. Like in the lab, I always get like almost 200 samples per day. I analyze it for like, mercury in fish. I see that the mercury level is around 0.5 in the big fish. Then my advice to you, if I can, if I may, that, really when you choose, mercury, when you choose fish, you have to choose the smaller fish, the better. The bigger fish has high mercury. Especially too, like we did lots of research from the Gulf area, we found out that there's lots of people has mercury into the body from the heavens. Beryllium, aluminum, arsenic can affect magnesium. Magnesium, as we said, is a very important element. Activate 400 enzyme in the body is much needed. Here we're talking about the high and low sugar in the blood, and really it was like, it can control by this factor. Sugar level is controlled by so many factors, like, the insulin secretion, the adrenal malfunction has high effect on the sugar level, and the mechanism of really the changing glycogen in the glucose, this is very, very important. The inability to transport sugar from the blood, as you know, that zinc has a big involvement on the insulin secretion, and that's why when we don't have, the insulin secretion is not good for the diabetes. Problem with insulin receptors involve chromium, iron, lead, cadmium, and arsenic, and also too the permeability of the cell membrane. This is very, very important, like, because most of the cell membrane, like, has the receptors are made of iron receptors. That's why when the iron is like really blocked, the receptors cannot have a communication between the cell inside and outside the cell, and the insulin level goes high. And we all know that for a fact that the fat cell contains three components here. The fat cell always contains carbohydrate, contain fat, and contain insulin. And that's the composition of the fat cell. That's why, the most important thing when we eat, we have to know like how to differentiate in eating between, the good fat and the bad fat, the good carbohydrate and the bad carbohydrate, and the good protein and the bad protein. That's why, we have to really, if we'd like to have control the obesity, we have to really like make sure that we don't combine fat with carbohydrate. Because when the insulin goes high, and it's not used, it goes into making fat cell. That's why carbohydrate and fat, it has to be really controlled, and we have to use, like, we always talk about eating vegetables and fruit, because fruits, like specific, the insulin level does not go high with it. Some fruits, like banana, and, dates and all this increase the level of insulin. That's why we have to really control the insulin production. Lipid oxidation is very, very important because, as you know, like the cell without the membrane is not as good function. That's why extra virgin olive oil here play a big, big role. Extra virgin olive oil can put like a positive charge on the cell membrane, which any bacteria, Candida or H. pylori, can be go away or not attacking the cell membrane by increasing the extra virgin olive oil. That's why, like you see in lots of countries like Spain, Italy, and France, which they consume extra virgin olive oil, their health is much better. Glands here, people they think that the only pancreas is the only gland affecting diabetes, but from what you can see here is the pancreas and the adrenal and the thyroid gland is also like can affect diabetes. Here, when we analyze like 1,500 samples, what I noticed that very, very important that the iron was very high in the hair, and the copper was very low, and selenium was very low, and too much toxins. Then by taking sample from the hair, digest it and analyze it using this machine, we find out that diabetic patients have very high iron level in the hair, has very low copper level, and very low selenium level. And there's so many toxins like lead and cadmium and arsenic. Then we all know that iron is absorbed only in the reduced form as ferrous iron. It's needed for vitamin C for the absorption of iron. Iron used only if it's in oxidized state, because iron and copper has two functions, always reducing and oxidizing agent. And we know that zinc can affect the copper. That's why, when we make, the body imbalance for mineral, the state of the body will be in good homeostasis. But we found out that iron overload can cause diabetes. There's lots of talks about it. One of the important points here is that tobacco smoking, and tobacco, when we analyze cigarette, we found out it has very high level of iron, and then we take iron with tea, the absorption is high, and that's why we have iron overload. Also, we like to eat meat. I'm not against meat, but meat has to be really consumed right. I believe one portion of meat a week, which is good, because you need the arginine on the meat. Arginine is very important amino acid, which is really needed, for the body. But one time a week is enough, I believe, for the body. Also, we have to use the meat which doesn't have fat, because we all know that fat goes and embedded on the cell membrane. That's why it raises the cholesterol. That's why we have to use flank steak, which has less fat. Alcohol consumption, we know that people who consume alcohol, thank goodness it's not here in Cairo or in Egypt in general. We found out that alcohol can increase the absorption of iron. Then people who make this not happen. Also, Dr. Barry Marshall, Nobel Prize winner 2005, we find out that 40% of the whole world has bacteria, which is called H. pylori. That's why one of the benefits of extra virgin olive oil, as I said, make positive charge on the cell membrane, which any attack of H. pylori cannot attack the cell. That's why really one advice that I may give for all people, if you can, to test for the H. pylori. I am diabetic. I was diabetic, and I was smoking. I was eating meat. Now I'm reducing to once a week. I lost 50 pounds. I'm not drinking. I was H. pylori positive. I get rid of it. That's why when you do all this, you can reverse the body into a better health state. Candida too, 40% of the world has Candida. You can Google this in the internet. UV exposure is very, very important nowadays with the ozone. That we are not really in contact with too much sun, because as you know, especially at 12 o'clock, which the sun is very, very horizontal, the rays can affect the DNA and can damage the DNA. Genetics play a big role here. We all know that, if your mother, had diabetes, you can have diabetes as well. Then genetics is one piece of a puzzle, but it's not the only one. Environmental pollution, we talk about it. We talk about the lead, and we talk about mercury, we talk about arsenic. And as you see, I did a big study. We got from UNICEF lots of samples of water, and we found out that we have arsenic level high in Bangladesh. Oxidative stress can cause by imbalance between the production of reactive oxygen species and the biological system, which detoxify the reactive intermediate and repair the damage. Here, very, very important, slide. As you see here, this is oxygen, reactive oxygen species. That's we all know about free radical and antioxidant. This is one EL, which is decrease the reactive oxygen species, and hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is a very, very corrosive acid which can cause the cell membrane to be damaged. You know? And here this OH group, which is a hydroxyl group, which is very, very like it goes into guanine, DNA, and damages the guanine. Then here we know iron and copper relationship, and here the copper and zinc relationship, and here the enzyme and the cytochrome enzyme and the oxidase enzyme, and here we see the selenium and the glutathione and how does it affect it and the mechanism of it. This is a big talk. Maybe later on we can talk about this slide. Oxidative stress. Copper and iron are both redox elements, as we said, that they work both together with the enzyme to eliminate the reactive oxygen species. Manganese and zinc also play a major role into the elimination of the free radical. Selenium, I cannot emphasize how important selenium is. You know, I have lots of data, you know, showing that German came here to Cairo in 1981, and they did a big study in hair analysis about the people from Alexandria to Aswan. I have the paper with me. They showed that people had much iron and low selenium, which agree with our research. Then selenium activates a very, very important enzyme called glutathione peroxidase enzyme. This enzyme is, you know, it takes all the free radicals from the body and throw it out. I found out that it's not found in so many foods, but one of the food which is found in high concentration is Brazil nut. And the second, it can be found in garlic as well, but in Brazil nut, and it's almost 130 ppm selenium, which is good for the body. Oxidative stress and diabetes. Lots of research about like really and type 2 diabetes that there is when the A1C increase, you know, there is an increase of the 8-hydroxyguanine, and we see that the OH group can go and activate and break down into the DNA, which I'll show later on. The elements that can control the oxidative stress, you know, we know that iron and manganese, and we know that copper and zinc as well. Here, this is very, very important here. This one here, this is the DNA, which was discovered by Reagan Watson in 1953. This one here is a very, very weak point in the DNA, which is what happened, the OH group goes and makes 8-hydroxyguanine. And that's why there was lots of research about 8-hydroxyguanine and the level of A1C increase with the increase of 8-hydroxyguanine. Outline of the research, we analyzed hair samples of key elements from 3 groups using ICP-MS, healthy individual with diabetes, deceased people. Also, we looked at the number of diabetic patients from Egypt and Bangladesh. We looked at the sex and the health status of the individual. We found out, as we said, the healthy people, like, you know, you see that the iron here, this is the healthy, this is the sick, this is the deceased. Then you see that the increase of the iron level, you see the level here of the lead increase, and we see that the manganese too increase, you know. The mineral analysis, you know, it can show you too, like what's the level of selenium. As you see here, when the selenium decrease, you know, people are sick and people die here. When the iron increase, that causes the oxidative stress, not good, you know. And you see the copper here decrease, and you see the manganese increase, then you see the lead increase, then you see that, you know, mineral has a big effect, and when we take tissue from the body as here, it can, with the blood and the urine, it can give us a big picture of what's happening inside the body. And as you know, like the hair is very, very good tool because the concentration of minerals in hair is 10 times the concentration of mineral in blood. Then you can go and do like lead analysis in blood, and the results are negative, but really you can, the best technique for doing toxicity level is lead. And as you know, Napoleon Bonaparte, they find out that he died with arsenic. He had 10 times the level of arsenic in his hair, and he said the cause of death was arsenic poisoning. Here, this is a fascinating study. I did it on myself. I used my body as I was diabetic, I said, and then I was doing hair analysis for 3 years. And here, diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and you see that my manganese level was so high and my iron level was so high. I said, okay, let's take metformin. I took metformin here. My A1C here was 8.1. Take metformin here. My manganese level went down, my iron level went down, and my sugar level was 6.1, the A1C. Then I said, okay, let's stop taking metformin. I want to see what happened. I stopped taking metformin. My manganese level went high. My iron level went higher back again. And I said, okay, let's see what's going to happen if I take metformin back again. I took metformin back again, and my manganese level went down, iron level went down, and shows, And then I decided to lose weight. Then I lost 50 pounds. And when I lost 50 pounds, and I didn't take any metformin, and my manganese went down, and my iron went down as well. I went to my specialist. He said, "This is really, I've never seen something like this before. You will just come and see me after 1 year, and like he stopped me from taking metformin, and my level now is like 5.9, which is perfect." Here is some study we did. Like I asked my brother here to send me some diabetic patients, 15 samples, just to confirm it even more. And I asked Chanda from Bangladesh to give me 15 samples of hair, diabetic people, uncontrolled diabetes. And then you see here that the level of manganese is high, and this is a normal weight, and you see how high is that's the Egyptian, and this is the Bangladeshi. The lead level as well, and you see here, this is a normal weight, and this is from Bangladesh, and this is from Egypt. And the selenium in here, this is what's supposed to be around 1.3 ppm. You see here the selenium is low in both Egyptian and Bangladeshi people. The iron, you see, the iron is supposed to be in here around 8 to 10 ppm. See here that the iron is so high in Bangladeshi people and high in the Egyptian people as well. Carbohydrate metabolism, we all know that chromium, vanadium, zinc, iron, selenium, magnesium, manganese, and copper, they play a big role in converting glucose to energy. And the lack, one of them can disturb the glucose metabolism and can disturb the function of the endocrine gland as well. Here, I'm writing a book about this now with Dr. Pierre, what I call it the anchor of life. Here, what's calcium, magnesium, and how important calcium, magnesium is. Because as you know, heart pump like this, calcium, magnesium, That's why the calcium, magnesium level is very, very important for the heart pumping. We all know that potassium, sodium are very critical as well because they play a major role in the body. That sodium here we have to control because it's not a good element. Lots of relationship with hypertension and blood pressure. That's why we have to reduce our sodium intake in our body. As here you see iron, copper, selenium play a big role, and zinc and manganese. We did the hair sample from Iraq, 70 samples. We did it from Basra. I asked Dr. Abdallah to give me the sample. He got me the sample of 6 people, and we found out very, very interesting observation. We found out that 60% of the sample had high uranium. I cannot comment on that, but this is toxicity. Basra, and we found a high number of samples had strontium, which is uranium decomposition. Large number of samples had high sodium with no potassium. That's why we had high adrenal stress. High number of samples had elevated iron, which again is